By the time the meeting ended, Tavia Drummond had not raised her voice once. She had not needed to. She stood at the front of the room in the same gray cardigan she'd worn on the flight from Toronto, her carry-on bag still sitting by the door because she hadn't bothered to check into the hotel yet. And she looked at the 11 people seated around the conference table. The lawyers, the board members, the two men from the investment firm who had flown in from Calgary that morning, and she said quietly that she would be withdrawing her offer. Not renegotiating, not pausing, withdrawing, and then she picked up her bag, thanked them for their time, and walked out. Nobody stopped her. That was the part that stayed with people afterward. Not what she said. Not even what had happened the night before. It was the silence that followed her out of that room, the particular kind of silence that falls when 11 people suddenly understand, all at once, exactly what they've lost. The Rideau Grand had been open for 31 years. It sat on the edge of downtown Ottawa like it had always been there and always intended to stay. 12 floors of pale limestone, a brass revolving door that had been polished so many times the original engravings were nearly gone, and a lobby that still used fresh-cut flowers even in February because the original owner had believed that small luxuries signaled larger ones. It was the kind of hotel that charged for the name as much as the room, and for 3 decades it had been able to get away with it. On the evening of March the 4th, Tavia Drummond arrived alone. She had come straight from the airport. She was wearing dark jeans, a gray cardigan over a white t-shirt, and white sneakers that had seen better days. Her carry-on was a black rolling bag, small, unremarkable. The kind frequent travelers use because it fits in the overhead bin and doesn't make you wait at baggage claim. Her hair was natural, pulled back loosely. She wore no jewelry except for a thin gold ring on her right hand, which had belonged to her mother. She did not look like what she was. She rarely did, and she had long since stopped trying to change that. The lobby was quiet at that hour. A Tuesday, mid-March, still weeks before the spring conference season, would fill every hotel in the capital. 2 guests sat in the wingback chairs near the fireplace. A man in a dark coat was checking out at the far end of the front desk. The chandelier above the entrance threw soft amber light across the marble floor, and the lilies in the central arrangement were fresh enough that you could smell them from the door. Tavia rolled her bag across the lobby and stopped at the desk. The man behind the counter, his name tag said Fletcher, and he had the particular posture of someone who had decided, some years ago, that his job required a certain performance of distinction, looked up from his screen, looked at her, and looked back down. Not a glance, a deliberate appraisal, the kind that takes in a cardigan, a pair of worn sneakers, a rolling bag, and makes a decision before a single word has been spoken. He said, without looking up again, "Can I help you?" The phrasing was technically correct. The tone was not. It was the voice of someone who had already decided the answer to that question and was only asking it because protocol required it. "I have a reservation," Tavia said. "Drummond," he typed, slowly, with the particular deliberateness of someone who is not searching but stalling. "I'm not seeing anything under that name," he said. "Try Tavia Drummond. Or it may be under Drummond Tech. It was booked through my assistant." He typed again. His expression did not change. "I don't see a corporate booking either." Tavia waited. She had flown 4.5 hours from Vancouver. She had eaten a granola bar over Alberta. She wanted a shower and 8 hours of sleep before tomorrow's meeting, and she was not interested in making this moment into anything more than it was. "Could you check again?" she said. "The booking confirmation number is DT4471. He typed it in. He looked at the screen. Something shifted in his face, almost imperceptible. The kind of flicker that someone trained to manage first impressions should have suppressed that. And then he said, without meeting her eyes, "I see the reservation. Unfortunately, the suite you booked has encountered a maintenance issue. We'd be happy to offer you a standard room instead." Tavia looked at him. "What kind of maintenance issue?" "Plumbing." "When did this come up?" "This afternoon." She kept her voice even. "And no one called my assistant. We attempted to reach the contact on file. She took out her phone. There was no missed call, no voicemail, no email. She showed him the screen, not aggressively, just calmly, the way you show someone evidence when you want them to understand you already know the truth. Fletcher looked at the phone. He looked away. I apologize for the inconvenience, he said. If you'd like to take the standard room. I booked the suite, Tavia said. I need the space for meetings tomorrow morning. I'll need the suite. He straightened slightly. There was something in his posture then, a decision being made, or perhaps one that had already been made before she walked in and was only now being acted upon. As I said, it's unavailable. I can offer you our premium standard, which is a very comfortable. Is the suite actually under maintenance? Tavia said. Or is it being held for someone else? A pause. Brief but there. The suite is unavailable due to a maintenance issue. I understand that's not what you'd hope to hear. She looked at him for a moment. Then she reached into her bag and took out a card. Not a credit card. A business card, white with black lettering, the kind she'd had printed in 2019 when a friend told her she should carry something that wasn't her phone, and she set it on the counter. Please have your general manager call me, she said. Tonight, if possible. Fletcher looked at the card. He did not pick it up. Of course, he said. He did not mean it. She took her key card for the standard room, found the elevator, and rode it to the 7th floor. The room was fine, clean, well-appointed, the kind of standard that another hotel might have called a junior suite. She stood at the window for a moment and looked at the lights along the Rideau Canal. The ice still half solid, in early March, a man walking a dog along the path below, the Parliament buildings lit up orange in the distance. She showered. She ordered room service. She opened her laptop and spent an hour going through the materials for tomorrow's meeting, which concerned a mid-sized logistics company that had been looking for a strategic investor and had, through a sequence of introductions, arrived at the doorstep of Drummond Tech. She went to sleep at 11:15. No one called. In the morning, she came down to the lobby at 8:10, dressed for the day in a navy blazer and dark slacks, her bag at her side. She intended to find a quiet corner of the restaurant to review her notes before the 9 o'clock meeting. The lobby was busier now. A group of men in conference lanyards was clustered near the entrance. A woman in hotel uniform was restocking the brochure display. At the concierge desk, a young man with close-cropped hair was on the phone. Tavia walked toward the restaurant. She was intercepted before she reached the entrance. The woman who stepped in front of her wore the hotel's livery, a deep burgundy blazer, name tag that said Renee. And she had the particular energy of someone who had been told to handle something and had decided to handle it very much in the manner of someone who was not handling it well. Excuse me, Renee said. Her voice was bright, the surface of it, and something else underneath. Are you a registered guest? Tavia stopped. Yes. Could I see your key card? There was a beat. Not long. The length of time it takes to understand what is happening and decide what to do about it. Tavia looked at her. Then she looked past her at the restaurant entrance, at the man in the lanyards who had walked past without being asked for anything, at the couple in blazers who had entered before her without slowing down. Why? Tavia said. Renee's smile did not waver. It's standard procedure for restaurant access during busy periods. Is it? Yes. For all guests. Another pause. The smile held. Of course. Tavia reached into her jacket pocket and produced the key card. She held it out. Renee looked at it. She didn't scan it, didn't take it, just looked at it, and then said, Thank you. Enjoy your breakfast. Tavia walked into the restaurant. She sat at a table near the window. She ordered coffee. She opened her folder and read for 40 minutes. And she did not look up. And she did not think about Renee. And she did not think about Fletcher from the night before. And she did not think about the suite she had booked and not been given, because she had long experience of deciding which battles were worth the energy and which were not. And she was meeting with 4 people in 40 minutes, and she needed her mind where it belonged. But something had shifted in her chest, something quiet and old and familiar, the particular weight of being seen as something other than what you are. Not because of anything you've done, but because of what you look like, what you're wearing, how your hair sits, which assumptions attach themselves to your face before you've opened your mouth. She had been carrying that weight since she was 9 years old. She was used to it. Being used to something doesn't mean it stops being heavy. The meeting went well. The four people from the logistics company, their CEO, a man named Grantham, their CFO, a woman named Ilse, and two members of their board, arrived at 9 sharp and spent the first 10 minutes being slightly confused about which room the meeting was in, because Tavia had, that morning, quietly arranged to use one of the hotel's smaller boardrooms for a fee rather than conduct the meeting in her reduced room. She had dealt with it herself. She had not complained to management. She had solved the problem and moved on, because that was what she did. Grantham was smart and a little cautious, the way people are when they've built something over a long time and become afraid of changing it. Ilse was sharper, faster, more comfortable with risk. The board members said less than they should have, and more than they probably intended. Tavia listened more than she spoke. She had built Drummond Tech over 19 years on a combination of things. Technical ability, certainly, but also this: the capacity to understand what someone needed before they had fully articulated it themselves. She had grown up in a house in Scarborough where money was an absence, a constant negotiation, a set of subtractions and workarounds, and she had learned early that listening carefully was sometimes the only resource she had. By 10:30, she could see that Grantham wanted the deal. She could also see that he was about to let hesitation talk him out of it. She told him what she had told 3 boards and 2 CEOs before him: that she didn't invest in companies, she invested in people, and that the people in this room were worth investing in. She meant it. She said it plainly, without the performance of conviction, which is always less convincing than the real thing. They shook hands. Ilse said she hoped Tavia would come back to Ottawa in better weather. Tavia said she hoped so too. She meant that as well. She was back in the lobby at 11:40, meeting finished, bag packed, car booked to the airport. She had a few minutes before her car arrived, and she stood at the concierge desk to ask about an envelope that her assistant had apparently arranged to have delivered, a contract amendment that had arrived by courier that morning. The concierge, a different young man this time, checked the mailbox and confirmed it was there. He handed it over. She signed for it. Simple, unremarkable. Then she heard the voice. It was not loud. That was the thing she remembered afterward. It was not raised, not aggressive, not the voice of a scene. It was the voice of someone who believed they had every right to say what they were saying, and so did not feel the need to lower it or dress it up. Fletcher was behind the main desk. He was speaking to someone she couldn't see at first, another staff member, younger, standing with a tablet, and he was saying, "She had a booking confirmation number, which I'll grant you. But the energy wasn't right. You develop a sense for these things. You have to." He said something else. She caught the word situation, and then the phrase standard of clientele, and then a soft sound of agreement from the younger staff member. She stood still for a moment. The envelope was in her hand. Her car was 7 minutes away. Her flight was at 2:15. She thought about what it would cost to simply walk out. Then she thought about the younger staff member, who was nodding, who was learning, who would carry whatever Fletcher was teaching them into the next decade of their career. She walked to the front desk. Fletcher saw her coming. He did not quite manage to rearrange his expression in time. "I'd like to speak with the general manager," Tavia said. Her voice was level. There was nothing in it that could be called aggressive or dramatic or even particularly tense. It was simply certain. "Now, please. The manager is currently—" "Now." Silence. The younger staff member looked at the tablet. Fletcher picked up the phone. The general manager's name was Harland, and he had been in hotel management for 22 years. And he had a practiced face for situations like this. Open, attentive, faintly apologetic in advance, the face of someone who knows they're about to hear something they would prefer not to hear. He came out of his office and shook her hand and said he was sorry to hear she'd had a concern, and would she like to speak in his office? She said the lobby was fine. She told him what had happened, not the version with emotion in it, not the weight she had felt at the breakfast table, not the old, familiar thing that she had long since learned to carry without visible effort. Just the facts. The suite that was unavailable, despite no prior notification, the key card check at the restaurant entrance that had not been applied to other guests, what she had heard Fletcher say. Harland listened. His practiced face stayed in place, but something moved behind his eyes, the particular movement of someone doing rapid arithmetic. Miss Drummond, he said, I want to assure you that what you've described is not consistent with our standards. It's consistent with what happened, she said. I'm not asking for assurance. I'm giving you information. A pause. I understand. I also want you to understand who I am, she said. Not because it should change anything, it shouldn't, but because I think you should have the full picture. She handed him the same card she had left on the desk the night before. He looked at it. She watched him read it. She watched him read it again. Tavia Drummond, founder and CEO, Drummond Tech. The company was 14 years into a trajectory that had taken it from a two-person operation in a rented office in Scarborough to a firm that employed 430 people across 3 cities and had, 2 years prior, closed a Series D round that had made the cover of the Globe and Mail's business section. She had been on that cover. She had worn a navy blazer and her hair natural, and her mother had called her 3 times that morning, and she had cried in the car on the way to the shoot because her mother's voice still sounded proud in the particular way it had sounded when Tavia was small and did something small that her mother noticed. She had not put any of that on the card. There was no reason to. The card said what it said. Harland looked up. Mrs. Drummond, he began, and his voice had changed. She heard it, the frequency shift, the recalibration. I want to personally apologize. The apology I want, she said, is the one you'll have with your staff, not with me. He blinked. I'll be checking out now, she said. My car is outside. She picked up her bag. Mrs. Drummond, if there's anything we can do. There is, she said. Train your staff to treat everyone the same. Not the people who look like money. Everyone. She said it without rancor, without the heat that might have made it easier to dismiss. She said it the way you say something you have thought about for a long time and have simply decided, finally, to say out loud. Then she walked to the door, through the brass revolving door, into the cold Ottawa morning, and got into the car that was waiting for her at the curb. She did not post anything on social media. She did not call a journalist. She did not speak to anyone on the plane other than to say yes, thank you, water would be fine. What she did at 35,000 feet over northern Ontario was open her laptop and write a brief, precise email to 3 people: her communications director, her legal counsel, and the head of her foundation, which focused on access to post-secondary education for first-generation students in the GTA. The email was 5 sentences. It contained no exclamation marks, no adjectives, nothing that could be read as dramatic. It said, "The Rideau Grand in Ottawa. We were in preliminary discussions with their parent company, Whitmore Hospitality Group, regarding a potential sponsorship of our foundation gala in November. I'd like to pause those discussions. Please let the relevant contacts know. I'll explain more when I'm back." She closed the laptop. She looked at the clouds. The thing about Whitmore Hospitality Group was that they had been quietly struggling for 2 years, not in a way that showed on the surface. The hotels were still full enough, the restaurants still functional, the brand still carried the weight of decades. But the group had overextended during a period of low interest rates, and now the rates had climbed, and 2 of their newer properties were underperforming, and their board had been quietly circling the question of capital for most of the last 18 months. The Drummond Foundation Gala was not a small thing. It had raised $4.2 million the previous year. The media coverage was consistent and positive. The guest list was the kind of guest list that other boards noticed and talked about. Being the host venue and title sponsor was not a favor Whitmore Hospitality would be doing for the foundation. It was the other way around. Tavia's communications director, a woman named Bess, handled the call the following morning with the precision and the particular gentleness that Bess always brought to difficult conversations, which was why Tavia had hired her. She called the VP of Partnerships at Whitmore and said that due to a recent guest experience at the Rideau Grande, the Drummond Foundation would be pursuing other venue options for the November gala. The VP asked if there was something they could do to address the concern. Bess said she wasn't sure that was possible at this stage. The VP called back 20 minutes later. Then her director called. Then, by early afternoon, Tavia received a call from a number she didn't recognize, which turned out to be a man named Hollis, who was on Whitmore's board, who had heard about the situation from 3 different people in the preceding 4 hours, and who opened the conversation by saying he was deeply sorry and wanted to understand what had happened. She told him, the same way she had told Harland. Facts, no performance. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, the person at the desk, was his name tag Fletcher? She said it was. Another pause. This is not the first complaint, Hollis said. There was something in his voice, not surprise, exactly, but the sounds of confirmation arriving after long suspicion. I want you to know that. I didn't assume it was, Tavia said. What can we do? Hollis said, genuinely, not to save the sponsorship. I understand that's off the table. But what can we do that's actually right? It was the right question. She gave it a moment. Make it a policy, she said. Not a training module, not a paragraph in a handbook, an actual enforceable policy with consequences. And make sure the people on the floor know it comes from the top. Yes, that's reasonable. That's more than reasonable. And, she said, find out how many other complaints were filed and ignored, and decide what you're going to do about the pattern, not just the instance. He said he would. She believed him, which surprised her a little. She had expected the call to be what these calls usually were, an exercise in managing optics, a performance of accountability. Instead, he sounded like someone who was actually troubled, someone who had built something and did not want it to be this. She didn't soften, but she didn't harden either. One more thing, she said. Yes, there was a younger staff member standing there when Fletcher was talking. Someone who was nodding, who was learning from him. Whatever you do, make sure it reaches that person. Hollis said he understood. She said goodbye. She set the phone down on her desk and sat for a moment, looking out the window at the Toronto skyline. Gray March sky, the lake flat and pale to the south, a plane moving slowly toward Pearson. Her assistant knocked and leaned in. Bess wants to know about the November venue. Do you want to start looking at alternatives? Tell her the Aga Khan Museum, Tavia said. I've been wanting to do it there for 2 years. She turned back to her desk. The day continued. 12 days later, Whitmore Hospitality Group issued a public statement about updated guest conduct standards across all 12 of their Canadian properties. It was not a press release about Tavia. Her name was not mentioned. It was a statement about values, which is how these things usually travel when the person at the center of them declines to make it about themselves. Fletcher was no longer with the company. Renee had been placed on a performance review. The suite that had been unavailable for maintenance, it turned out, had been rented the following morning to a couple who had requested it at check-in. No maintenance had been done. Tavia learned these things from Hollis, who called again 2 weeks after their first conversation. He said the board had voted to commission an independent review of guest complaint records at all their properties. He said they had found 4 other complaints over 18 months that had been filed and not escalated. He said they were working through them. She said she was glad to hear it. He said, Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why didn't you post about it? Most people, especially with the platform you have, because I wasn't trying to destroy them, she said. I was trying to change something. There was a pause on the line. Then Hollis said quietly, The difference matters. Yes, Tavia said. It does. She looked at the gold ring on her right hand, her mother's ring, thin and worn smooth at the edges. Her mother had grown up in Trinidad and come to Canada at 24 with 1 suitcase and a copy of a nursing textbook and a stubbornness that had nothing theatrical about it. She had worked double shifts at a hospital in Scarborough for 9 years before she finished her certification. She had cooked Sunday dinner every week without exception, even when she was exhausted, because she believed that certain rhythms held a family together when nothing else could. She had told Tavia once, when Tavia was 15 and furious about something at school that no longer seemed worth naming, "You don't have to make every fight loud. The ones that change things are usually quiet." Tavia had not fully understood what she meant until much later. Now she thought about it often. The November gala raised $5.1 million. It was the most the foundation had raised in a single evening. The Aga Khan Museum, as it turned out, had a quality of light in the evening that the previous venue never had. Warm and golden, pouring through the geometric screens, falling across the tables and the people around them, making everything look like it was already something worth remembering. Tavia gave a short speech. She thanked the donors. She talked about the students the foundation supported, not in aggregate, not as statistics, but as individuals. A young woman from Rexdale, who was now in her second year of engineering at Waterloo. A young man from Etobicoke, who had graduated the previous spring with a degree in education and was teaching grade 4 in Malton. She named them. She had asked their permission. She did not tell the story of the Rideau Grand. It was not that story's night. Afterward, she stood by the window with a glass of water and watched the guests move through the room, and she thought, not for the first time, that this was the strange arithmetic of her life. The indignities that had accumulated over the years, and the things that had grown in their shadow, fed by stubbornness and by her mother's voice and by some quality she couldn't fully name. The willingness to keep going, to insist quietly and without apology, to refuse the option of becoming smaller. She did not think she was exceptional. She thought she was stubborn. Sometimes that was enough. Her foundation director found her by the window and said there was someone who wanted to meet her. One of the scholarship recipients, the young woman from Rexdale, who had come to the gala as a volunteer and had spent the last hour working the registration table, and was now, apparently, asking very specific questions about Drummond Tech's summer internship program. Tavia set down her glass. "Send her over," she said.